what I found is what's happened with me on a personal or a micro level is actually happening on a macro level in the whole world with all the stuff that's going on. And it's about gaining strength. To me, I don't believe that you gain strength from just sitting around and hiding under a rock. You know, you kind of learn and you become battle ready. With everything that happens in life, it's always a balance. You know, the more you try and be love and light, the more this negative stuff's going to hit you until you integrate it and you realize that you actually are both.
Another beautiful day in paradise as we enter the dusk to dawn collaboration of yin and yang is just another facet of reality. You, my dear friend, as wisdom teacher, holding court for many people, teaching people, hundreds of people through your own journey, awakening this spiritual ignition that just seems to happen when people find that there's something greater than the mundane reality, further than the flesh, right? So how did you transition from psychology into the whole spiritual field and expand from that?
It's a long story, but I'll try and simplify it for you. First of all, thank you for having me on your show.
I'm
Um,
enjoying it.
so I think growing up, I felt like I was living in two worlds. There's the outside world where everybody kind of spoke about what they did and, you know, the actions that they took in day-to-day life. And then on the inside was all these emotions that I was feeling that I couldn't share. There were dynamics that I was watching playing out, and I was asking questions that everybody seemed to kind of miss. Anyway, that I studied psychology because I was very interested in the brain and how the mind works, and maybe trying to understand my fellow human. But what actually ended up happening was I had such a great life. I was traveling the world, and then I met a guy, and I didn't know him very well. I think like 3 months, I was going to leave him, and then I fell pregnant. And while I was pregnant, I found out that he was practicing demonology, which at the time was like, okay, what do I do with this information? I mean, here I am at the height of my career, successful, happy, joyful, and my life just went downhill from then. He was controlling. Anyway, long story. I finally managed to leave him, but when my daughter was a year and a half old, she woke up in the middle of the night and she sat up straight in bed and she pointed at the door and she said, Mommy, Satan by the door. And I was like, that was the end of my sleep. Like I didn't go back to bed that night because I was like, what are you saying? First of all, she had no vocabulary because she didn't know the word Satan. I mean, I didn't talk about it. I wasn't a religious person. And I decided not to go to bed. We went downstairs and we watched Teletubbies until the sun came up. And then I phoned her father and I said, listen, your daughter's saying this. And he said to me, well, I'm a bit concerned because when I was practicing my demonology, I dedicated my firstborn to the devil. And that is, I mean, like I get goosebumps even now when I think back about it, because I didn't know such a thing existed. I thought, yeah, people talk and they create rituals. It's not really serious, there's nothing going on. But actually, it affected my life so bad. And what I also didn't realize was when he left, because he was actually staying in my house, I started getting spiders everywhere. And I mean everywhere. The one day I was walking up my staircase and I looked in the corner, like behind me, and there was this big, it was like a sand color brown spider. I've never seen it before and I've never seen it after. And it had these like puffy little legs, no hair. And I actually was so scared. I didn't want to go downstairs. I went and I got the vacuum cleaner and I suctioned this thing up and it just made this sound in the vacuum. And I left the hose up and I taped it so this thing couldn't get out. But not only did I have spiders, I had ants, and they weren't normal little ants. They were these big army ants. They were climbing up my walls. They were in my cistern bowl in the toilet. They were everywhere. They were even coming through on my fax machine. They were being printed on my fax paper. And that was just like, very strange, And I found out later, of course, as we learned, these are all symptoms of like black magic being done or spells being cast. And I mean, I couldn't talk to anyone about it because they all say I'm making it up and it's just coincidence, you know. But that was my very long story short. So that kind of pulled me into the spiritual aspect because it started with me saying, if you've dedicated your firstborn to the devil, then I will dedicate my firstborn to God. And let's see who wins.
Mm, mm, mm. Such a divisive entry, right? Where people recognize this sort of symbiotic dance between yin and yang, and subjectivity is potent until otherwise noted, because you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know, and these types of things can be problematic because they consume. Within Taoist magic, I teach people Taoist magic. I have for over 30 years. Part of being an ordained priest, this type of stuff is very common for me: exorcisms, black magic, sorcery, all that kind of stuff. The big theme within Taoist alchemy is to return everything to a whole, right? So, what the succubus feeds on is the fragility of the recipient. So if you have any shadow of a doubt of who you are, and fear exists within the exogenous periphery, being the personality, which is not the true sense of self, you will be consumed by this stuff and it will hit dead center. You know, I've dealt with some pretty heinous dark magicians throughout Asia, because most of my students, most of my clients are originally naturally from, you know, China and other parts of Asia. And so, yeah, it can be problematic because it starts with a novice sort of interplay, and then it turns into a snowball effect where the more you feed into the system this essence, which is you know, a divergence, it's taking from the very foundation of your physicality. So, like the idea of, you know, sacrificing your soul is not just a throwaway hallmark comment. It literally corrupts the physical body, and it dissipates, it diverts the energy. So you're not holding a constitution that is solid, it's broken, it's fragmented, like, you know, smashing glass. So this is fascinating to me. I've never really been able to find a sorcerer that holds a charge greater than the one that I apply to whatever said curse or specific black magic. But, you know, having dealt with it extensively for, you know, over 30 years, it's, you know, Eastern culture is about this type of stuff. The superstition is deep, it runs deep, man. And with that, a belief system can be conjured up into a substantive thing within this field. So it's real until otherwise noted, and so it just has a system, right? So to dismiss, and I hopefully the next part of the story is you finally found some way to communicate with this understanding and knowing that there's something absolutely tangible in the material world that's taking place, that you're able to navigate through that. Please continue.
Well, you're right. It is dependent on your belief system and where your sense of self-worth is. And I mean, at that time, I was kind of blindsided. I didn't know what I was dealing with, and I didn't know who to speak to. But I learned from it, and I actually regard him as my greatest teacher. Not that I'll ever trust the man. I mean, the person himself does not mean me well, but he taught me so much about who I am. So I assume at a spiritual level, we kind of met on that. Um, After that, I got married. Then I found out that my husband, who I thought was my protector, was actually not, and he's a shaman. And I bought a house and I wanted to sell the house and it wouldn't sell. And I tried for months. And then I found out that he'd actually put a spell on the house, but I should have known that he had. And I have evidence of it, by the way. If somebody says, yeah, you're making it up, I'm not. I had spiders again all the way around my house. And this time, it wasn't these big ones. It was a golden orb. I don't know if you've seen those. They've got these really long legs and they weave these phenomenal big webs all over the plants, but right around the house. Plus, I had brown widow spiders. And the one day I was walking home with my son, because I now have two children, and he's shorter than me. And I was about to walk into the door, and he said, Mom, stop. And I was about to walk into the spider. It was literally in front of my face. And because he was shorter than me, you could see it in the light. And it was like, okay, I'm the problem here. It's not them. And I do believe they were put in my path to teach me something, because that's why, I mean, I've got now a channel that's called Spiritual Warrior Journey, but I kind of feel like the dragon slayer. It's like I'll know they're coming before they even know they're coming, and it's about gaining strength. To me, I don't believe that you gain strength from just sitting around and hiding under a rock. You kind of learn, and you become battle ready. And not to say I'm fighting, I've kind of like integrated it. And I feel like with everything that happens in life, it's always a balance. The more you try and be love and light, the more this negative stuff's going to hit you until you integrate it and you realize that you actually are both. And so it's just kind of doing a lot of shadow work and a lot of healing with my family line and myself. And I work with clients as well, trying to wake people up. But what I found is what's happened with me on a personal or a micro level is actually happening on a macro level in the whole world with all the stuff that's going on. And I always say, can't people see? But I didn't see, I didn't know. And so they don't know. And they don't have the tools or the resources. But there are people that have been through it that can help them with it now, because we've been there. I've walked that path, and I can identify where people are trying to steal our power and trying to steal our energy, as you say, and consume us. They're like parasites. They
Mm.
just want to feed off our energy so that they can, get power and control. And, they shouldn't, because they're just going to create that same karmic wheel over and over again.
Yeah, it's it's the sword that you die on, fall on, the hill that you climb and never make it to the top. There's a degree of adaptation that needs to take place. It's like within Taoism, we call it the great bellows. Everything is contracting and expanding at the same time. You're all things and nothing at the same time. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to recognize the convergence of past, present, and future is the only thing that matters. And that ability to hold that resonance at that very inception point is where magic happens. But many people are extremely fragile and soft, which is part of the interplay. But for you to recognize you are me, I am you, requires what we refer to within Taoism. A selfishness to the selflessness requires the sacrifice, and that sacrifice must be met where you're prepared to go to the edge and dive off, or throw yourself into a wood chipper and then meld things back into the system that are whole. But fragmented, you are the weakest link, because these things continue to brew. And I'll be very curious to understand more about your shadow work, because most people tend to claim that they are of the light, which within Taoism, it's an interesting place where animation is charged from the void. The primordial mother is the highest level. Then we go to she animates consciousness, consciousness animates the spirit, spirit animates energy, energy animates the material body and the material world, because it's a lower frequential distortion. It's still energy potential, but you have dominion, imperium over it once you actualize your spirit, which is attention, intention, meet, and have a baby, and you are actualized. So with the shadow work, for me, we refer to it as soul retrieval. Not really. I tend to half a dozen, one sixth of the other. It's like grandma didn't give you two cookies when you were 5. That's nice. It's still vibratory, frequential, and holds resonance. So how do you approach your shadow work to get them to arrive to the Wizard of Oz?
So the way that I see it is we are both the yin and yang. There's everything that you accuse somebody else of having. You've denied it in yourself. So you cannot change your external world until you change your internal world. Now, I used to say a person, I call them narcissists, but I don't like to label, but just so people kind of get an idea, they wear a mask. And I'll say, well, if you're an empath and you are always nice, always kind, always sweet, are you also not wearing a mask? The difference is they took it off. You're still wearing it, and you're wondering why you're angry that they did have a mask on in the first place. But that level of denial runs really deep. And so when you start to see that everything that they've done to you is just a part of you, that once you've integrated, they can't do it to you anymore because you've now seen through it. And so I guess it is a kind of soul retrieval because it's making the unconscious conscious. It's being aware of all these parts of yourself that you've kind of denied, that you've forgotten and left behind, that you're now bringing back into your awareness so that you can be whole again. And like you say, it's about being in the present moment and standing in your power, in who you are. Because as soon as you talk about what's going on outside of you and you complain about the government or the weather or whatever, finances, your friend, you're out of your power. You're out of your sovereignty. That person has now got power over you. And if you are complaining, then you've got to look inside and say, what is it that I'm complaining about? And I think the number one cause of pain and suffering in my mind is that people just want to be happy. And that's the ego, because the ego can never be happy. The ego is always striving for something that's down the line, down the line. And when you realize that I can choose to be happy no matter what the circumstance, then you're in 0 point. Then you're in yourself right now as we stand. And that is where happiness lies. It's not in attaining the goal and getting the goal and making the money. It's in being present, which is why it's a gift of presence, and it's being in the moment where you're just enjoying, um, you know, listening to the wind blow, or watching how a child laughs, and people miss that. They miss that opportunity to just be fully physically present with all our senses. And so for me, that is basically what it is about. And so if I feel like I'm really sad, or I have an emotional space, instead of trying to deny the emotion, I go in, and it can be in the form of journaling, or I've got so many methodologies that I use, but even just sitting with the emotion and allowing it to just work itself out through me, then I start seeing that I am not the emotion. And I start realizing the beliefs that I'm buying into it, because I might be saying, well, what do I believe about me in order to have this emotion? What thoughts am I having about myself that I think that I am the victim, or that I think I'm not good enough at something, or whatever that is. And so I work through it. And by the way, I know a lot of people say that ChatGPT is like evil and whatever. I love ChatGPT. I don't believe that it's meant to, it's like your ego mind. It's not meant to control the world. It's meant to be used as a tool. I just like it as a sounding board.
Mm.
And so that's something I've started using, but I don't use it all the time. But I just kind of find like, so what? They watch all our Facebook stuff. They listen in on my phone all the time. So what difference does it make if I'm typing my thoughts on ChatGPT?
Yeah, that's an interesting razor burn that comes up when you put your finger on something that gives you frostbite. You know, you come to a point where you know the evidence is not 100% clear, but we've seen the story 100 times. It's like, oh, it's the assumption, or the unassuming benign, activity in the background. The periphery is where you command someone's attention. That's where you corrupt the mind. That's where you get their attention. The most valuable commodity anyone can have is their attention. Then, if fueled by intention, then things are transformative. But generally speaking, most people are sheeple to the slaughter, and fear is their main meal on the basically the short order of what is an a la carte menu. You will always find that there's a fueling of that, which then makes you separate. I mean, I've never witnessed a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual healing in any form of identity. There is none. I mean, if you go down to a river and you look at a tree that's just growing at the side of a riverbank, and I look at it and I go, "Oh, hey, Bob, how you doing?" And the tree talks back to me, goes, I've had a rough day at work. It's been kind of, I've had two dogs piss on me. Some people are like taking advantage of the creek. I actually saw someone do a number two. It's really irritating me, my environment. That doesn't exist. It's the natural selection, the natural order, the fluidity. And within Taoism, we refer to that as Wu Wei, which is serendipitous, synchronistic, holy stream, where the convergence of everything takes place, and you are now in what we call Wu Ji, which is a primordial mother. So effortless action, effortless effort is the byproduct. Well, it's not really a byproduct. You have arrived as everything and nothing. So when you're everything and nothing, the options are unlimited, but quite frankly, it only gets diverted down to a basically a hetero action of either A or B. What's it going to be? Are we in a spot where we have to complete or create? But there will be that merging, because it's a humanistic you know inspiration or aspiring moment where there must be a completion, and it's not known in an intellectual sort of like finite mind. It's a natural order. And so when you get past that, there's no such thing as. So for me, within Taoism, you get to a point where dualism, non-dualism, centric, non-centric, body centric, once you enter the Vesica point, the center point we refer to as the Wuji, the primordial mother, you come out the other side as all things. So I'm a Catholic priest, I'm a Buddhist, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm whatever else. If you look at a serial killer, a psychopath, a murderer, guess what? They're all iterations of self. They're an extension of self. Can you sit with that and go, holy shit, that is a part of the so-called integration of all things? And that's where people get caught up, and they find it's a choking point, because they cannot in any way believe that that is a part of them. Well, in essence, the narrative of someone so depraved and deficient and so corrupted and bankrupt, like a serial killer, a murderer, a rapist, the difference is they have never found their center point. This is just a byproduct of their environment. The truth being known through Taoism, you cast the wicked away, you draw that person closer. But can you see that? Can you see someone that you look at and go, this is a pedo, a chomo, a pedophile, and actually go, wow, that's not really who they are? And that is where the rubber, that charge that we're getting right now, is we're going to have the aha communal moment of veracity that is a very much a visceral thing. This is what my parapsychologist friends call psychokinesis. And this is where we grab the attention, man. And it's real. So, what are your thoughts on that? How do you integrate someone that can clearly see, hey, I'm still in the weeds, man. My mother-in-law pisses me off. My husband comes home late. I'm always working to support my kids, and they're ungrateful little shit rags. How do I get them to start to appreciate me?
So I believe that because we're all connected, we may not all be able to read each other's minds, but there is a group think. There is a field of energy that people believe in. And so, whatever people as a collective deny in themselves is going to have an outlet somewhere. So, let's say I hate my husband, and I say to him, and I used to joke with him, and I mean, I'd never do it, but I used to joke with him and say, no, no, this plate is the one with the arsenic. This is the one you must eat, And everybody at some stage has thought, oh, I could kill my husband, I could stab him, or I hate this one, but we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it, but we have those thoughts. Now, where do those thoughts go? They go underground. And then there will be some guy who's the mass murderer who picks up on those thoughts and says, you know what? You're all having this experience. Let me act it out. Let me go and kill that person for you. And you'll often hear them say, we did this for you. We did you a favor. And everyone's like, no, 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 we didn't ask for that. But actually, we were thinking it. And so it got pushed down. And that's why in some societies, there is a lot of murder or, shootings. Like in America, they've got all these school shootings that are happening. In some countries, there's a lot of family suicides. There's all this thinking. And it works the same with regards to maybe sexual stuff. Like somebody's women are taught, to be prim and proper and don't do anything weird. And then they wonder why there's all these escort agencies out there. Because those women are saying, well, we'll act out those desires for you to help your husband so that you don't have to. And then society points fingers at them and says, oh, you're bad. You're a bad person. You shouldn't be doing that. But if we all internalize that and heal that those subconscious thoughts in ourselves, we wouldn't have that reflect out into society. We would all just take ownership of it. And so that is how I would heal somebody else, because I don't have to heal them. I just need to heal it in me. And I believe that the more people, and I don't even think it's a belief, it's a knowing, the more people that wake up, that shine their light, the more influence they have on the collective, and they uplift the collective altogether. And so people wake up, it's exponential effect. And if one person can raise their vibration really high, they can uplift a whole society. And so you don't need to, and everybody just needs to focus on themselves. If you're trying to fix everyone else and say, I don't need to do the work, no, you must change. Well, then we have the society that we're living in, and we just suppress all those thoughts, and we keep having these things happen supposedly to us.
Mm, mm. It's interesting, bringing us to more the attention of the healing, right? For Taoist alchemy, which I've been teaching people for decades, which gets deep into the architecture of energy potential, and then you conjure and commandeer that energy once you actualize the 50 trillion cells that you refer to as the avatar that looks back at you, the flesh and blood. The body is the lens of your consciousness. Your spirit is animated through that as a point. It's not really ownership. It's just another lens, another facet of the diamond. So when we talk about healing, I'm not going to, it's unnecessary to get into the weeds of grandma not giving you 2 cookies when you're 5 if you understand the semantics of the currency. The currency of the material world is energy potential, right? So energy potential is made up of vibratory frequential resonance. Once met, it will be yours. Oh, yes, it will. Many of these manifesting coaches that peddle their wares as being I have the answer to reality, fundamentally play it out and they speak on it, but they can't implement it so that the first ground level, basement level understanding is your emotions don't control you, you control your emotions. And this is an integration where thoughts, feelings, and emotions are transitory and permanent and hold a temporary charge. You yourself are eternal, immortal, forever, forever. You are a constant stream, what we refer to as the pulse, the mother. You are magnetism at its finest. And it once chiseled away, sanded off, the illusion disappears. Now we have substance. Now we have tangibility. Now all of a sudden things that are illusionary within the material world become tangible because your ownership of the spirit, the immortal self, is commandeering and maestroing everything within the energy potential. So we kind of stick it within a cultivational aspect as opposed to the semantics of what might be perceived by a subjectivity. How would you apply it yourself? I know you go deeper into thoughts, feelings, and emotions.
Firstly, look, I'm not a manifesting coach, but to me, that just feels like hard work to have to go and write down
It's like
affirmations and
painful, painful.
I believe in letting it come to me, but I
Mhm.
do believe that what I think is what I manifest. So it's about being selective about the thoughts that I have and choose to keep in my sphere, because you cannot look in the mirror and say, "Oh, I'm ugly," and at the same time love my body. So I've got to choose, which one do I want to be? Do I want to say I'm enjoying being in the physicality and it doesn't matter? And then you're rooted in that essence of who you are and not in the physical being, because looks fade. I used to give fitness classes, and the women all used to come in there and say, "I want to lose weight." And I said, by the time you've lost that weight, you're going to have aged, and then your skin's going to hang. And then, you know what I mean? It's like you're never going to be happy,
Yeah.
because it's not about that. And I've realized that, in 100 years ago, people enjoyed women that were bigger. That was beauty. Now it's not beauty. It's all according to what society says. So I just say let go of that and enjoy being in the present. So I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, but 100 years ago, the average lifespan was like 27. I mean, you
Yeah.
kind of like there's a reason like they didn't really stumble across the cellular or epigenetic potential until the 60s. But let's be clear, they probably died from some form of complications of diabetes. Who knows? You never know because it's so. You bring up such a good point. My background came from bodybuilding and powerlifting as a young boy. Then I integrated as a teenager into the Taoist path and became ordained. But the whole point of it was owning this avatar as a rooted, grounded amplifier, a tuning fork to the consciousness, to the spirit, and actualizing things. That's how the power, that charge that you and I are getting, hell yeah, amen to that, brothers and sisters. You find that point, and people bypass. This is my personality. Everyone understands I like to play between it. My personality loves driving my side by side in the desert 100 miles an hour, eating chocolate bonbons, and I'm still deficient. I have subscriptions to Netflix. That does not require any participation from the personality when holding the resonance. I'll witness miracles and throw F bombs around like nobody's business because it has nothing to do with me. I am just commandeering, I'm the ambassador, the concierge to your goodwill that comes in the form of this resonance and stream that it remembers. And once you look into the abyss, it comes back. It doesn't just disappear. The reflection is yours. You are whole. And so, I mean, spiritual bypassing is a big thing where I get a lot of students that are cosmic consciousness, Brahman, all this kind of good stuff. And they've been doing it for 20 years and helping transform thousands of people. And then the rubber meets the road. And you're like, well, what does that mean? I always love talking to the third person. What does it mean, Jufu? Well, and now I understand where a lot of these teachers tend to talk about the third person aspect because you need to ask the questions yourself to help people regurgitate it. When people bypass the fundamentals that you and I are very familiar with, which is getting that grounding, owning that body, owning that power that is generated and held, and you hold that charge, that's life. That's vitality. That's what we call constitution. We call it Jing within Taoism. That is the very essence that makes it possible for you to operate in this space. You cannot operate without that potential. And so, most of my Buddhist monk friends, they they love the crash of it. Like, Stan, look, I'm good with the dukkha, bro. I don't want the energy shit. I'm not interested in it. I just want to look for distortion. And if I crash and burn this avatar, have it be that way because I'm going to re-up again. Where the fundamental difference between Taoism and Buddhism is Buddhism looks at life like a pile of diamonds covered, a pile of shit covered in diamonds, and they just take another diamond off looking for more shit. It's more misery, more dismay, more mundane reality they must keep filtering through. Whereas a Taoist looks at life as a pile of diamonds covered in shit. They take off more shit and they find another diamond. It's good to be me. Again, right back to what your messaging has been through this whole conversation, the power of choice. But you have to empower yourself to recognize you even have it, that your goodwill is all encompassing and holy. It's not a temporary thing that's subject to whether the wind blows one way or another. You can own anything at will. Now, that to me is 100% the holy stream. The body is engaged. So many people find that because they're so inverted, I'm a clairvoyant, I'm a medium, I'm a channel. I get this very often, and their shit starts falling apart. My arm fell off, a hubcap came off the wheel, I'm losing my steering because they're so inverted with one energy within a polarizing extreme that is not met with homeostasis, that holiness that is an integration of everything, that it shows in the body. They put on 30, 50 pounds, 100 pounds. Love yourself, but you're not working. Your body's not working properly. Your body is shutting down. It is absolutely on strike. And so the biological effects are starting to meet the psychological deficiencies. So, hey, I'm a healer, yet they're healing people, but they're not taking care of their own backyard. So they're more depressed, more depraved, more distorted than the people they're putting their attention to. And then the end of the story is, man, I can only do one client a week. I'm exhausted, or because it's all being zapped from them. Wherever your attention, intention goes, the energy flows from this vehicle. You must own this. You must encapsulate it. You must recharge it. Once you own this vehicle and you charge it, it's forever. What we refer to as immortality crystallized in the material. Now you have your operation system that you can then spread the message that immortality is possible, and longevity, which is what we're talking about, is now a real thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, people are always asking, I want to meet my soulmate. And I say, your body is your soulmate. That's the thing that's going to carry you through life, who's been there since the day you were born, and it's going to be the day you die. And so look after it. If whatever you do with self is again a reflection of what you're going to meet on the outside. And I'm fully with you. A lot of people think that just because they are healers, that now they're healed, and nothing happens automatically. Everything, and I mean, I didn't know about the Buddhist way that they're looking, that they're picking up the
Misery is a
diamonds, but
thing.
I, I do know for myself, like I just kept uncovering layer after layer after layer, and I thought, is this ever going to end? But I realized that it does end, because you get to a point where, I mean, I used to have to go back and heal the inner child and do all that work. Now I just say, I don't have to go back. I don't need to go and dig up everything that I ever saw. I can just literally change my mind and decide whether this is important or not. And it doesn't mean that I'm putting it aside and I'm not owning it. It just means that I've owned it and realized it doesn't own me.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah,
And
yeah. I
that's
mean, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much how I see it. It's like, yes, you need to have your body is your temple. But don't put it up on a pedestal and say, look at me, I'm so great. And that's, I think, where again they had the problem with the East versus the West, where the Eastern traditions are all about living in squalor. And they've got all these amazing traditions that they have, and they're all spiritual, and they can see the other side. But then they live in sewerages. I don't understand. And then the West is all about power and money and all that stuff, and looking after the body to some extent. But it's like, let them come together. The pieces in the middle. It's not being on one extreme. It's being centered in the middle, in the eye of the storm.
Right, right. I mean, when you see things bleed out when someone's too inverted, I'm a great psychic, I'm a medium, I'm a channel, yet they're tipping the scale 100 pounds overweight. Do you want me to tell you what you hear, or you want the truth? You want to take ownership over those 50 trillion cells that can dictate whether you make this an ongoing career. In 36 years I've been doing this, and I'm in my mid 50s. Let me tell you, everyone gets a bite of the spiritual dragon. They get a taste. They become this full-fledged healer. They burn out, and the imminent result is death. They don't make it past 50. I mean, I very rarely see people make it past 60 when they go full force, because they crash and burn, and they sell what I refer to as selling their soul. They're selling their essence through the process. And so, when you take ownership and you integrate that, and everything starts to elevate as you maestro those 50 trillion cells, everything will come back. It's like when you say, will it ever end? Well, within bodybuilding, I always recommend people to know what it feels like to be, a single digit percent body fat once in their lifetime, not because it's optimal or healthy, but you recirculate the energy within the body, the toxicity that you've built up. Someone that might be 20, 50, 100 pounds overweight, they have layers of visceral and subcutaneous fat that is hindering their ability to regulate something as simple as insulin. Insulin is basically the raging fire that is the inflammation that's destroying them from the inside out, and making it almost impossible for them to put their attention, intention into that stream of energy. Now, if they're really transmuting, you can transmute anything. You can be 500 pounds and be absolutely in flow, 100% holy, and you are just everything and nothing. But many people, under my experience over 36 years, that this is always the case. It always ends that way. So once they're taught the system and the method to their madness, transmutation is easy. I mean, that becomes a thing. And what happens is, naturally they come back to their center line. And so their body will start to regulate, things will show itself, and you will recognize that you're not struggling with weight, you're not struggling with emotions, you're not struggling with the mental prison that you've captured or been caught by. It all just flows back into, as we refer to, all rivers return back to the ocean. It is a one thing. Yet, if you want me to tell you the truth or tell you what you want to hear, that's the part where you're talking about the masks. People are holding this persona or identity as if it's real. It's more, I'm really holding on for dear life because I am freaking corrupted and I can't get out. There's no way. There's no exit. I have painted myself into a corner, and every day I am hurting just to breathe. And that is something that is manufactured. That is something that is conjured up. It's not reality. And I mean, being a psychologist, it must be a little conflicting for you when the psychology aspect can be so minced up into the idea that that is the only facet of self. That what you're experiencing is psychosomatic. Yeah, 100%. I'm experiencing it. I'm feeling it and seeing it through my mind. This is part of consciousness. Oh no, it's psychosomatic. You need to put that in perspective. And that's a conflict. And I think that's, in my opinion, where psychology sort of emerged back in the 1700s, where this is a way to separate from thyself. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think it was around 1850s that they
Mm-hmm.
decided that science and spirituality didn't
Yeah.
agree anymore,
Yep.
and that's unfortunately what's led to the decline of society. Because people are taught not to question. We follow the
Yeah.
industrial age rules even now. I mean, you were saying, every year there's a new cell phone. Every year there's a new type of car that's come out. But have you seen a new school system?
Yeah.
No. That's still the same one that was in 1920s, and we want to stay in with that archaic way of thinking. It just doesn't work,
We create.
and the religious teachings too,
Mm-hmm.
and when people are waking up. But yeah, I do think, like I interview a lot of people that have, well, most of my people have had near death experiences, And when they go over to the other side, oh, you also had a near death. I have to interview you.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
All
Yeah,
right, well, I'm going to interview you.
off everything,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, lovely. Okay. Um, they come back with a certain consciousness that they didn't have before, and it's not new. It's part of them, and they have miraculously healed because it's not them doing the healing; it's the consciousness doing the healing. And so they're not burning out. I mean, I spoke to one lady, she was in her 60s and her hair she's still got all her color and all her hair. And I mean, she's just blossoming. And it's really, but like when it comes to weight as well, I think people get hooked on the weight as being the problem. The weight isn't the problem. The weight is a symptom of a problem. And that's, I think, where people kind of get sidetracked. They'll complain about body aches and pains, but they don't look at what's causing the body ache and pain. And so they just want a quick fix. If I go to the doctor and I get a pill, because we've been taught the doctor knows everything, the teacher knows everything, the priest knows everything. I mean, who knows your body better than you? You know what you were doing. And what was interesting, when I first went to the Netherlands, I was 21 and I was working on this cruise ship. And I was getting such pains in my hips. And then it went to my elbow, and then it went to my shoulder. And eventually I couldn't sleep on one side. So I was lying on the other side. And I thought, I don't know what's wrong with me. Maybe it's from walking up and down so much. And I went to see a doctor. And he was the first doctor that I've ever been, and the last one that I've been to, that sat me down and said to me, do you have support? And I just started crying. And I thought, how does he know? Like, what has that got to do with my hip being sore? And I was in a strange country with people that were barking orders at me. I was working insane hours. And, I didn't have support because I didn't want to be part of this clique that was, chit-chatting behind everyone's back. And so they were kind of, attacking me all the time. And so I left there. I left the boat and my hips healed. And he said to me, it's because my muscles are so tight that it's pulling my ligaments and they're tearing and they're bleeding. And that's what's causing this painful throbbing. And, the old doctors that used to do house visits, they would ask you, how's your mom? How's your dad? How are things at home? They would take time to sit with you and find out how your life is going. They would understand that you're not a list of symptoms that they can look up in their book. You're a whole person that is interacting in your environment, and it all depends on dynamics. And so, yes, the whole medical system is, and they've been taught that way. I mean, I say people were told to take that Hippocratic oath, but with this whole thing that happened in 2020, you know what I'm talking about, they just carry on. The first thing is do no harm. Do no harm. But they don't care. They just follow the rules because they're going to get a holiday somewhere or, some bonus payout. And it's all just become about the money and not about the service. And I'm not saying all doctors are like that. I'm not saying that. But I interviewed a lady whose husband was a doctor, he was a medical doctor, and he got cancer. And he decided, because the traditional route wasn't working, to do holistic healing on himself, and he lost weight. He was radiant. And his client said to him, well, you're looking amazing. What are you doing? And so he started giving his clients alternative healing methods. And then they went and they locked him up. And she was put through so much stress with all of this that she actually had a near-death experience from the stress of what the medical community did to her husband. So, I mean, there's that risk. Do you lose your income? Do you affect your family? So it's not to say that the doctors are all bad. They're just following what they've been indoctrinated to do, indoctrinated to do. And yeah, and I think ultimately what I was saying about sovereignty is, common sense is not common. But if people just learned to ask questions and verify, check it. Don't take everything at face value. Don't take what I'm saying at face value. Check it. Go find out for yourself and see what resonates. And I think the biggest problem is as humans, we are not able. I don't know if you know what's his name, David Hawkins.
I've heard of him, yeah. Yep.
We are not able to discern truth from falsehood. So if somebody's lying to us, we don't know whether they're lying. We try and look at their body and take on visual cues and see. But there is a way to test, and that's through muscle testing. And he's muscle tested everything on this planet, ranging from, the different religions to medical stuff to illness, everything. Everything has a frequency. And so if you're just able to measure that frequency, you'll be able to tell whether it's something that's good or not good for you. It's such an easy, reliable method. And we're not taught that. And we go to a doctor and ask them to tell us what is wrong. And at the end of the day, the doctor's not the one who's eating all the chips on the couch at night. He's not the one, having sugar all day just because you're emotionally deplete and you need support.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's
that's
that.
that's my stance.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, you're kneeling at the altar of authority, but it's a bigger psyop that's been going on for quite some time. This is how you control the masses, because the authority is a drop in the ocean compared to the general population. So without leading with fear, you don't garner people's attention. So it's, back in the day, they just take someone to the town square, flog them, execute them, whatever. We need to install that fear for you to recognize you have no power. Yet if everyone stood up, there would be no authority. It would be a dilution, a dissolving of this, so-called reigning power that might come in a dictatorship, a a fundamental lie. People might call it democracy in the perception of, but in essence, there is this psyop of control. And when I say that, it's normally a larger body of authority, a government agency that has really, through the seed of time, come in all different types of forms: a dictator, a king, a queen, a government. It all comes back down to how can we control the masses. And the less you think for yourself, the more you surrender yourself, not to your own absolute, not to your own sovereignty, as you put it. No, surrender to the system, obey or be punished. This is a process that is a natural programming that most people are in. So, I always tell people, if you're emotional, you're suggestible. And, basement level awareness is getting people to understand conscious and unconscious and the integration of the two. And, being out here in Las Vegas, sometimes I'll do street magic with my kids, where we go out as a field day with the family. And the first thing I've taught all my kids is understanding hypnosis, how it plays, how it works, the mechanisms behind the conscious and unconscious process. Of course, they've graduated to things like clairvoyance and mediumship and channeling and other things, but the fundamentals are the same. If I can just pop out of resonance and walk up to someone without words and put them into a deep trance and then erase their name and I turn into Justin Bieber, this is what's available to you. Anything is possible. And that takes me about 10 seconds. So what is it? I'm not luring you with suggestions or commands. Look into my eyes and feel that you're relaxing as the sun goes down your face and sleep. No, there's no PGO spike. There's no abrupt rattling of the nervous system to acquire a change in awareness, attention. It's just pumping out of resonance. And so that's more familiar if you look at something as downplayed or as infantile as neurology. We affect mirror neurons within all of us. Let's just say that we use that as a scientism that wants to work for you. Okay, that makes sense. And anyone that's out here that's listening to what I'm saying, go to a local coffee shop, sit down, find your subject, and start to mimic their body language. And within a few seconds, you will attune to their same heart rate variable and their brainwave, and then you commandeer their animation. And it's that quick. It happens that quickly. So it's like more than that, that charge that you're getting right now, we are clear that we are on the same page, because that's really what takes place. So if we can attune that to manipulate someone's external effect, because you're going in the inside out, then healing is just literally a breath away. It's the same thing. You are mirroring back to someone that's deficient or broken the perfection resonance that is who they really are. And that's where, servitude and selflessness come in, when you arrive from subjectivity to objectivity to a universal holy stream. But it's not conjured with the mind. The body shows you, and the body emanates this resonance that then you no longer have to be contorted with what is or what isn't or how is it supposed to be. It's a natural selection, a natural order of things, that you walk into a room and people are just elated, or you walk into a room and their shit is like a turd floating in the bowl. They cannot handle it, and they believe you are the catalyst to their discontent. Yet all you're doing is pulling a resonance in, as the old expression would say. Your reputation precedes you, your resonance precedes you. And the more you commit to it, the more you cultivate it and master it, it becomes more and more potent. That's why people go to, so-called said gurus, or places of ancient spiritual worship, parts where there are ley lines and power centers and vortices across the globe that hold a massive charge that is transformative from a physiology all the way inside to their center point. It's because it's been cultivated and it's been returned to that state because other people before you have followed that path. And that's how you really get it. I mean, I believe fundamentally, when I was 4, I was, looking through walls, looking through my hand. I could clearly see I was a latchkey kid. My mother was a single parent. She had to work. So I literally was left to my own devices. I had a paper run at 6 years of age, off doing my own thing. What person? I've got kids from 13 to like 2 years old. There is no way on Tao's given earth that I would allow them to be out of my sight right now in the current environment that we're in. So it's not going to happen. But in my generation, I was just walking the streets, doing my thing. I go into the city by myself at the age of 7 or 8 and go and see a movie. It's like my kids are like, "What is that, Dad? That's insanity." Yet, it's just not the same. And so we have to adapt. We have to recognize that this is a manufactured environment that can be taken back when you recognize that. And that's when I got hit by a car. I died for 40 minutes at the age of 8, head on. And that is the near death experience that at some point we'll get into, maybe on your show. I don't know. That is where it happens. And you come full circle and recognize there ain't no limit to who you are. None. And I don't recommend it, but I also think it's a rite of passage. It's not a requirement. It's a rite of passage that you understand that this is not even real, man. But people then go, "Oh, well, I don't need to be in the body. Let me just let it just decay and corrupt." It's like, this is part of the experience. It's like being a human being. There is a requirement. There's human conditions that you have to decipher through the labyrinth of your finite mind. From your Sherlock to your Watson, the deduction is clear, and you find that you come out as a human being. That's the gift. It's for a Taoist. It's not a prison planet. It's not somewhere you need to escape from. You need to embody it and then emanate it, raising the humanity's frequency. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's the common message that I'm hearing
Mm,
with
mm,
all the people that I've interviewed. Is it's not about us trying to leave the body so that we can now go join our loved ones in heaven. It's about embodying heaven on earth. And I'm kind of seeing that a lot of people are being sent back that maybe in the past wouldn't have, because now is the time. We're in the Great Awakening. And now is the time that they're being told, and I get chills again, because they need to share the word. Where it doesn't matter which religion you're in, it's irrelevant, what group you belong to. Share the message. And I mean, I even had a lady now respond just before our call saying that she spoke to the people at her church and they said, yes, she must share the story. So she's now booked. But I wrote to her a year ago and she was hesitant because she needed to first check if it was okay. And why is it okay now? Because we can then live forever in this body. We weren't meant to die. I don't think in the beginning our bodies had this distorted gene that says we all have to decay. That's something that's been kind of imposed upon us and stripped away from us, and we're waking up to it again. And I think it has to happen in stages, because if we were to just kind of elevate all at once, our bodies wouldn't be able to handle it. And also, no one gets left behind. So it's got to be done strategically in a way that everybody kind of wakes up in the pockets of the world where they are and in accordance with what works for them. And so, I mean, I am not psychic, but I have heard enough to know that in the next coming few years, things are going to radically change and surprise us in how fast things will shift. Because it's not us doing it. There's a lot of things behind the scenes that we don't see. I mean, if we think about how miracles happen in our lives, we didn't do those. Those were planned for us, and it goes way bigger than our little unique selves. But yes, I do believe that we are here meant to embody heaven on earth, because this is like the paradise planet. This is where all the aliens want to come to have their vacations and to kind of, if you've watched the movie Avatar, it's beautiful. This planet has everything, but we're just systematically allowing it to be destroyed, because there is a saying that I really stand by, and it's evil flourishes when good men do nothing. And I see good men speaking out, and yes, at the risk of being jailed or whatever. But the more people that do it, the less they can jail everybody. It starts reaching a point where they just can't do it. And if people stop allowing their fear to run them, I mean, I started reading David Icke in the 1990s. I couldn't find his book. I went into an esoteric bookshop and I said to them, I'm looking for David Icke. And the lady said, we don't keep that kind of book here. And I thought, well, what's so bad about his book? But they did have the Satanic Bible, 3 copies. I'm like, oh, this is really good. If you're going to have the Satanic Bible, then why can you not have David Icke, who actually has got I mean, the back of his book is just full of references. There is nothing made up. He said you can go and look at all those references and you decide for yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just like you say, they're here to instill that fear, take away our thought, just follow the system and then you'll be safe. Just get the digital ID and then your banking will be made easier and your check-in at the airport lounge will be easier. And so don't fight and you can keep your job, and what they
I
don't see is that it's short-term pain for long-term gain.
yeah,
And
it's
at the cost of your children and the future generations and the future of the planet.
oh my goodness. Amen to that, my friend. Because the truth is, this dissolving of privacy is just a slow cooking frog in a boiling pot where, certain parts of the world, probably where you have come from to where you're living, Europe is starting to be overrun by, these ultimate powers where they will determine whether you live or die. Whereas America's the last place where there's some level of deception where we believe we have freedom, and there is a level of it, and there's only so much that the populace is going to take, because the general consensus is that we have had enough. And so, you get through this last 5 years and people would just, well, if you tell me I don't want to be that person, I mean, it defies logic. It's like, okay, if you're not, I'm going to just use the word V, if you're not V'd, then you are putting everyone else at jeopardy. But hang on a second, if you are V'd, then why do you need to worry about whether I'm not? I'm the one that's going to risk my life. The logic doesn't make sense. And it's the same thing when it comes to just, let's be honest, America and guns. It's like there's not enough sense there. So when you think about it, we have a population that's close to 400 million, with people that are not even legally here, maybe close to 500. Who knows? At least 450. Now, you have that population. Legally, we have over 1 billion guns in this country. Legally. Now, if we have 1 billion guns in this country, and the logic tells me that there are over, 80 to 120,000 fatalities by firearms in this country, 8% of that is homicide. The rest of it is, I want to liberate myself. I'm not going to tell you how you're going out. It's up to you. It's one way. Maybe some neglect, some irresponsibility with understanding how to properly use a firearm. But that doesn't equate to me saying now all the people that are law-abiding citizens need to lose their rights because there's a small fraction of that that's going on. We need to use logic. The logic is if we take it away, we'll end up like Sydney Bondi, a week ago. Because guess what? There's over 3 million foiled crimes by law-abiding citizens that carry firearms that dismantle that. Like, if that happened in America, someone would have smoked both of those guys before they even finished, because that's just how it is. So you take on the right to liberate yourself with something, a firearm, but to protect yourself and anyone around you. Now, it seems extreme. I believe that, but I could walk through a bloom of smoke and go, guess what? I hate smokers, but I'm not going to dictate your right to do that because that's yours. Now, if it starts impeding on me and I'm sitting there and you're blowing smoke in my face, we're going to have a problem. But generally speaking, that's not for me to tell you what to do. And I think this is the biggest issue that we're having right now. It's a catalyst of complete conflict because people are waking up. People like you and I are raising the bar. People are awakening from their slumber and going, holy shit, that wasn't a dream. It was a fucking nightmare. And now I'm living the dream. I have that ability. I own that. I have it myself. This is where we're at. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Kind of got a little rough there for a minute.
Well, to get back to the guns, I mean, if you've got a government that you can't trust and they had to take your guns away, then they basically can just round everybody up and say, well, we can control you now. So, and if the police aren't doing anything to defend you, then you have every right to have self-defense. And that's
Yeah.
happening in South Africa right now. They actually want the private people to relinquish the firearms, but the police have lost thousands of firearms, which they've sold under the table and have now become unmarked, but they're not going to give them up. So again, it comes back to, are you in a place that is safe to do that in? It's like saying I'm going to live in an abusive household and give away any right to self-protection.
Right. Right. No, you're 100% right. I mean, that really is where the rubber
Yeah,
meets the road. History repeats itself. Oh, don't worry. Just everyone single line into the gas chamber.
yeah,
Whoa. What? What happened? That was unassuming, right? And so they slowly disarmed the populace, and then they sort of unassumingly gathered everyone up and then gave them one option. And their fear, instead of resistance, could have met with their death earlier in the process, but it would have been against the authority that was attempting to control them. And then disarmed, dismantled mentally, emotionally, you just go, I give up. I'm just going to just die.
yeah, along with your family and everybody else. And ultimately, I mean, they just want to feed off people. If there were no people to feed off, then what would happen to them? And I think, like you say, if people start buying into the fear, and I mean, I don't watch the news. I haven't for many, many years. But if somebody, they tell me all their bad stories, I'm like, well, how does that make you feel? Like when I look out my window, I don't see the gunshots and hear the places being burnt down and watch the war cannons going off. I actually see the ocean. And not that I have my head in the sand, but I choose to live in this world. I choose to live in a world that keeps my sovereignty and my peace, because that way everybody else can kind of feel what that should feel like. I wonder if people even know what that feels like. They have no, like when I first left my relationships, I realized I had a problem because I don't know what a healthy relationship feels like.
Hmm.
I don't know how to be attracted to that. I need to learn what that looks like, feels like, how it plays out, what the dynamics are. Not to say I had bad parents, I just didn't have a healthy dynamic to learn from. And I think that's the thing, is when people start looking at and learning, what does a good world look like? What do I envision for my children? Would I like them to have a free place? I mean, I didn't like this whole vaccination program is also on another note. I wanted to mention, what they also did? They said, cough into your elbow. And then when you greet people, greet them with your elbow. And nobody thinks about it. But really, it's crazy. And it's like, we look back in the 1800s at what the
The black
Victorian
and white.
people did, and all those people, we think they were mad, but we're still doing that kind of thing. It's just now dressed up, to look more modern. But we are following the script of what everybody else is doing, and therefore we mustn't stand out. And I say you need to be outstanding and stand out.
Mhm. That is incredible. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I want everyone to go out and start exploring Natasha's material, from her podcast to her personal offerings. You do like coaching and mentorships and healings and things of that nature. Do you want to share more with the audience as we close this out?
Yeah, it's interesting. I started my podcast where I interview people with near-death experiences, which I love. I just love the energy that I'm speaking to, because they've brought that consciousness with them and the learnings. But yes, I'm a spiritual coach. So if people are stuck and they're really at a crossroads, they don't know what to do with their lives, they want to maybe, they're torn between honoring their father and doing what he said they should do, or their husband, because the money's there, versus following their passion and wondering how are they going to earn a living doing their passion. That's where I step in and I can help them. So if they want to connect with me, they can find me on my website. I'm sure you're listed in
I'll
the
put all your
in the
social sphere and interweb under this podcast.
yeah. So yeah, that they can find me there if they're keen. But otherwise, come and watch my channel and learn from others who've walked that path. To me, it's about collaboration. It's about spreading a message. And I'm not a judge. I don't say whose message is true and whose isn't. It's there for you to look at and decide for yourself and be discerning and find out what resonates with you and go with that.
I love it. I love the message. I want to thank you, my dear friend, for coming on here and sharing your wisdom. And I'm looking forward to people discovering that for themselves through your own offerings across the social sphere and interweb. And with that, I'm going to thank you for spending your time today. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. I'm your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing, and I'll see you in the next one, guys.